Hi. Going to be going over the orderIT trading system for November the 18th, 2020. I have my orderIT application open and my analysis spreadsheet open, and start the analysis. It actually had 22 trades that were tripped, 5 were indicated as buys and 17 as shorts. So the first trade is CWH. That's Camping World Holdings Incorporated. It was tripped at 11:31:05, and it was actually tripped as a buy trade at 29.56. It was down actually 0.42%, so almost half a percent, at a price of 28.75. So it was actually down after the trip price. You can see it tripped around here. It looks. Excuse me. That is actually showing no positive movement, so let's check the analysis. OBV showing moving up in the morning, but down the rest of the day. OBV up in the morning, down the rest of the day. DI is showing up in the morning and pretty much down for the rest of the day, and Bollinger Band. So that definitely is not a positive trade possibility, so no good that trade. End result is no good. It indicated obviously at the point that it indicated, which it was moving up, but just the rest of the day it was not strong. Next trade is BDX, Becton Dickinson and Company. It tripped at a time of 11:45:12 at a price of 235.62, and it was tripped as a short sell. And as you can see, it was at 235.62, ended the day at 233.47, so it was down 3.69%. So it definitely is a positive end of day result, so that one is a positive trade. Indicators, OBV somewhat moving sideways. MACD actually, surprisingly, was showing as much showing more positive than negative MACD. That's surprising. DI though is showing fairly strong negative movement in the early afternoon and late afternoon. So MACD was actually, DI was showing more of a positive downward trend. Bollinger Band straight out is just downward. So the end result is that's positive. Next trade is CVS Health Corporation. It tripped at 12 p.m. at a price of 67.09, and it was a short sell. And it was down 1.18% at a price of 66.35. It was below the tripping price, so that's another positive trade. The indicators should show roughly the same thing. OBV showing somewhat steady, and then the day down heavily. MACD actually showing a bit at the tripping price. It was down, but actually it was up as much as down MACD, so that's also a question mark. DI showing very strongly though negative, so, and Bollinger Band showing it was down across the board. Next trade is ABYA, Avaya Holdings Corporation. It was tripped at 12:02:14 at a price of 18.05. It was tripped as a buy trade. It closed at 18.06, so it was above its syndication price, even though it was down 7.34%. And it was moving somewhat sideways. 12:02, so roughly in this area. Definitely a positive trade, as there was multiple points during the daytime that was actually above its tripping price. Excuse me again. OBD showing that it was coming up and moving up somewhat till early afternoon, and afternoon somewhat moving sideways. MACD showing up and somewhat staying a bit positive. It was actually down early afternoon and up again. So MACD not strongly positive. DI also showing it somewhat, positive, but not strongly positive. End of day positive. And Bollinger Band somewhat is a representation of the indicators in general, and it's basically showing it's moving sideways. But by the end of the day, you can see it's moving up again. So again, that's another positive trade. Next trade is M Macy's Incorporated. It tripped at 1245.04 at a price of 909. It was a buy trade. It was actually up 2.16%, so it's good that it was moving up. Its price, so at the end of the day, was $8.99, so it was actually down. So, was there any point in time that it was positive after the trade? 12:45, we're around here, so 9:15, 9:17, 9:13. There's multiple points in the day that it was actually above its tripping price, so there was multiple points for confirming that trade, and it again was up percentage-wise a good amount. Excuse me while I go to the chart again. So OBB somewhat moving sideways, and actually end of the day it was coming down. MACD again showing it tripped in the morning time, but actually was down for the most part of the afternoon. Came up a little bit in the afternoon, late afternoon, but not strong. DI again showing strong in the morning, and then mid-afternoon, or say early afternoon or something along that line, it was down. Bouncing back and forth and up there, so Bollinger Band probably somewhat a result of that the indicators were not strongly moving in one direction or the other, so Bollinger Band moving sideways, but though it did move above its indication price, entry price, so that was a positive trade. ENPH, Enphase Energy Incorporated, excuse me, it tripped at 101.38 at a price of 127.02 at a buy trade. It was actually down 0.16%, and its closing was 124.92, so that's certainly not positive. And 101, so it tripped around here, and that's not showing. So the trade activity is certainly not showing any positive nature with that guy. OBV is actually showing that it was moving okay late morning to early afternoon. Or morning to early afternoon, it was showing it moving up, came down a bit, and then moved up, and then came down. So a little bit of bounce, but it was showing somewhat a positive movement in general. MACD not showing anything strongly, bouncing back and forth. But late afternoon, basically MACD is showing that it was more positive mid-afternoon. DI, though, surprisingly, is showing it was somewhat positive all morning till early afternoon, and then a bit negative and then positive and negative. So EI is showing that it was positive. Bollinger Band showing that it was positive. And, it was coming down the end of the day, so there's no strong nature to show that that was positive. So I'll mark that as a negative trade because there's just no strong validation that it was moving positive. Next trade is ITUB, Itau Unibanco Holdings SA. It tripped at 235.04 at a price of 540. It was tripped as a short sell. Tripped at 540. It came down 2.36%, so down good. It was closing below its tripping price. And you can see down here, but you can see here at the end of the day it was definitely way, it would say it was down a good amount compared to the price itself. So to me that's a positive trade. Take a look at the analysis for that. OB showing somewhat a little bit bouncy in the morning to early afternoon, somewhat above the baseline, but late afternoon you can see it's coming down. MACD down, down, down. MACD showing somewhat a standard, negative downward trend. DI actually surprisingly showing more positive in the morning to early afternoon, and late afternoon showing fairly negative, even though you can see by the end of the day it was coming back up. Bollinger Band showing it down, so it was moving down in general. Next trade is BUD, Anheuser-Busch. It traded or tripped at a time of 240.01 at a price of 66.60, and it was tripped as a short sell, and it was down 0.99%, 65.89, 66.60, so that technically is a positive trade. Excuse me again. Because it was actually down below its tripping price. Let's check the actual indicators. OBD showing somewhat moving sideways, end of the day it came down. MACD showing roughly the same thing, end of the day came down again. DI was showing that it actually was positive in the morning time, and in the afternoon it was coming down, and you can see, well, again, as I mentioned in previous videos, that this yellow bar or yellow line on the DI chart is an average, which is an indication of the strength of the movement. DI's aspect is saying that the one that's above, the line that's above blue-yellow, is a point of the level of the, not so much level, but the point of direction that the stock is moving. And the yellow line is basically identifying the strength of that movement. And when it's up higher, it means that that movement is fairly strong in that direction. So we can see that it came negative in the early afternoon, and you can see DI average was moving up for the most part all afternoon and very strongly. So DI showing very strongly negative, and Bollinger Band is basically a consequence of that. You can see the end of the day it just came down. Morning it was coming up, but the end of the day it was coming down. So again, another positive trade. Next trade is NNDM, Nano Dimensions Limited. It tripped at 255.51 at a price of 470, and it was a buy trade. It was up 6.71%, and it closed the day at 477, and tripped at 470, so that's a positive trade. And you see early morning it's even up at 41, so definitely even after the fact it was up, so that's actually a good trade. Check the analysis of it. OBV showing again afternoon it was coming up. MACD showing it's coming up, even though it was down at the recording period. It was down, but came up afternoon. DI actually was showing fairly strong negative morning, and then positive, but not heavily positive. And Bollinger Band, again, the end result is it came up. End of the day it was actually somewhat moving sideways, but in general it was still a positive trade. LOW, Lowe's Companies. It tripped at 310.01 at a price of 148.61. It was indicated as a short sell, and the end of the day it was 146.71 and down 8.21%, so it was down quite a bit. Did make a bit of recovery early morning though, but for the day itself, that was still a positive trade. We'll check the indicators to see how strongly they are pointing. Yeah, you can see OBB right across the board, it was coming down. MACD showing the same thing, it was basically coming down. And you're going to see DI, it was somewhat, bouncing back and forth a little bit, but at the end of the day you can see very strongly negative movement. and the end result is, Bollinger Bands basically showing it's just a steady decline downward. So another positive trade. KHC, the Kraft Heinz Company, it was tripped at 345 at a price of 31.66, and it was a short sell, and it actually was down at 31.63, and it was actually up for the day. So this surprisingly it was up, so it probably came up early morning, and then just, as you can see, it was actually moving down for the day. So it was actually down, so that technically was another positive trade because it was down at the end of the day, which means you could have had a sell that was positive. Technically a buy because it's doing a short sell, so the closing would have been a buy. OBV, not heavily, even though it was down below baseline, and then today you can see it was coming down. MACD, again, somewhat moving sideways, and today moving down. DI, actually showing more negative than positive, and then today it's actually moving strongly downwards, Bollinger Band showing downwards. So technically indicators are showing good movement downwards. Next trade is CAH. It was tripped at 345 also, at a price of 53.44. It was also a short sell, and the end of day 53.32, so that's another positive trade. Another positive trade. Check the indicator analysis. OBV showing just downward trend, obviously, so that OBV is showing that it's moving negative. MACD, MACD showing somewhat negative in the afternoon, so it is moving down, even though you can see it's making a little bit of recovery on MACD. DI though very strongly negative across the board, and Bollinger Bands down, so technically that's a positive trade. Next trade is SLB, Schlumberger Limited. It tripped at 345 at a price of 20.02. It was also a short sell. Ended the day at 1997. It was down 0.60%, and early morning is actually down more. So that's the morning is just validating that it was moving down fairly strongly, so it's, for the respect of this system, it's positive trade. You can see OBV afternoon, that's when it indicated, and it just moved down. MACD bouncing back and forth. Strangely enough, as MACD was showing positive while OBV was showing negative in the mid-afternoon. DI though is showing somewhat across the board negative, and today you could see a DI was coming down very negative, and Bollinger Band just a representation of that. Next trade is SO, the Southern Company. It tripped at 345.01 at a price of 62.04, and it was tripped as a short sell, and it closed at 61.78, 0.93% down, so it closed below its tripping price, so that's another positive trade. Again, this is a short sell, so basically it means you would have bought the price, or excuse me, you would have sold the stock at 62.04, and you would have bought it back at 61.78 if you bought it back at the closing price, which means you would have made money because you closed it lower than it was above, so you made money from the fact of the difference closing to the opening price. And we'll go to the next one. OBV somewhat negative morning, sideways OBV afternoon. MACD showing that it's just moving down in the afternoon. DI for the most part down strongly down the afternoon. The Bollinger Band showing that it's moving downward. So the end result is that's a downward trend. Next trade is BP PLC. It tripped at 345.02 at a price of $19.60, and it was a short sell, and it was down 244 for the day, so it was down. It closed at $19.56, so it closed below its tripping price, and as you can see, early morning it's actually down below that, so that just validates that it was moving downwards. So that's another positive trade. Check the indicators. OBV, by the end of the day, it was moving downwards. You can see by early afternoon to late afternoon, it was basically moving steadily downwards. MACD, for the most part, it was moving downwards on a average basis, but not heavily for the most part. DI, though, showing very negative movement. And you see by the end of the day, it was moving very heavily negative. The Bollinger Band, just a confirmation of that. Next trade is IBM. It tripped at 345.02 at a price of $116.97. It was tripped as a short sell. It closed at $116.77, so it was actually down. It was down 0.79% overall. So that's another positive trade because it closed below its tripping price. You can see very much OBV showing it just coming down. MACD somewhat down and heavily down, and DI again showing across the board very heavily down by the end of the day. Bollinger Band showing it moving downwards on a regular basis. Next trade, IBN ICC Bank Limited. It tripped at 345.07 at a price of $332, and it tripped as a short sell. It closed the day at 1327, and you can see early morning 1308, so it was actually down, and then confirmed early morning it was down. So that's another positive trade. Indicators, again, OBV showing at the end of the day it was moving down right across the board on OBV. DI made a bit of a recovery mid-afternoon, but somewhat showing it moving down on a regular basis. DI across the board is moving down, so DI showing, somewhat, it was moving down the whole day. Bollinger Band just showing it coming down, so again another positive trade. Next trade is NET. MetLife Incorporated. It tripped at 345.07 at a price of $45.88, and it was indicated as a short sell, and it ended the day at $45.71, down 0.65%, and early morning it was actually down again, so that just confirmed that it was moving downwards, so that's actually another positive trade. And the indicator, showing OBV, it was moving down volume-wise. MACD bouncing back and forth, and actually made a bit of recovery mid-afternoon on MACD, but at the end of the day it was showing that it was moving down again. DI is showing roughly the same thing, but you can see DI was pretty much across the board moving downwards for the whole day. It was looking like it was making a strong downward trend at the end of the day too, with the average moving down. Bollinger Band just confirmation, it was just moving down the whole day. Next trade is BOTZ, Global X Robotics and Artificial Intelligence. It tripped at 345.16 at a price of $30.88. It was a short sell, and as you can see, it closed at $30.79, down 0.16%, and because it's down below its tripping price, that's still a positive trade. And take a look at the analysis of it. OBB left shooting sideways, but you can see end of day it just dropped. MACD is showing that it was moving down for the most part the whole day, and again end of day is moving down. DI actually showing positive in the morning, but the negative in the afternoon, and fairly heavily strong negative in the afternoon. And Bollinger Band again showing it was moving negative, and the end of the day it just dropped. So that's some of the consequence of that activity on that stock. Next trade, NLSN, and Nielsen Holdings PLC. It tripped at 355.05 right at the end of the day, obviously. It tripped at a price of 16.24. It was a short sell, and it actually ended the day at 16.21. It was down 2.29%. While right at the end of the day, it's still a positive trade because it was moving down still at the closing price. We'll see what the analysis shows for that. OBD showing that it was making a bit of recovery early afternoon, but then in the day it was somewhat moving downwards. MACD showing, yes, moving downwards. The MACD is a little bit bouncy, but by the end of the day it was moving downwards. DI. Surprisingly, DI is showing more positive than negative, but at the end of the day it was actually showing negative and moving upwards on average. So that somewhat is probably an indication of the Bollinger Band showing that it was moving down at the end of the day. So still a positive trade, but the indicators are showing that it was actually somewhat bouncing back and forth. Next trade is BX. The Blackstone Group Incorporated. It tripped at 355.07 at a price of 57.75, and it was actually tripped as a short sell. But as you can see, it was actually up above the tripping price, and it was actually up for the day. But you can see at the end of the day it was moving down. We'll check to see what the analysis is going to show for that. See, interesting, because this price of stock was moving. This stock was showing that it was up for the day, and it doesn't. It looked like early morning it was below close. So you can see the previous close 57.69, and it was at one point 57.30. So it did drop during the daytime before its previous close. At one point it was negative, but you can see it seemed like it recovered. But analysis-wise, the OBD is showing it is moving downwards. MACD is showing that it's negative as much as positive. DI very strongly negative, and Bollinger Band. To me, I'm going to fit this as a possible, because while the stock was up, the analysis is usually showing that it was moving down consistently. So to me, that's a possible trade. There's no early morning activity, so at this point there's no confirmation of it moving positive or negative. And there's actually one more trade that I didn't catch on my stock system, and that was Boston Scientific Corporation. It tripped at 12:30 at a price of 35.65. And you can see it closed at 34.26, down 2.20%. So that is a positive trade also. So that trade was negative. You can see, I'm not going to go through the analysis, but you can see it was down across the board. Made a bit of a recovery here in mid-afternoon, but even at that point, end of the day, it was coming down. So that's another positive trade. So in general, we have an average of 19 positive trades out of a possibility of 22 trades. So we're talking 86% positive trades for yesterday. So that's a good day also. It would have been a good day outcome. If you traded every trade, you would have had a good positive result. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.